CDs. If you were born prior to 1997, you probably remember CDs being a very important format when it came to audio. And when I was in high school and really started getting into music, CDs were a huge way to get into music. Not only could I go out and buy CDs, but I could also go to the library and then rip CDs into iTunes and put them on my iPod. It was amazing. And while downloads were available and very popular at the time, I really enjoyed having the physical media that a CD provided. You got the booklet with the lyrics, you got the artwork, you got things that the band wanted to say, you had the actual physical disc. It was cool. But CD sales have been declining for years, and as streaming's gotten more popular, vinyl has gotten more popular, and the obsession with physical media has shifted away from the CD and gone to the vinyl format instead. But CDs are making a comeback, it seems. According to Forbes, CD sales rose 47% in 2021. Now that is in part because there were major releases in 2021 from Adele, Taylor Swift, and a bunch of other very popular artists that pushed physical media, including vinyl sales as well. I think it's worth noting that vinyl sales also increased much greater than CD sales. But I'm seeing more and more publications like Rolling Stone and others starting to say you should be buying CDs, or CDs are making a comeback. And I think that's awesome because, I got a lot of CDs, and this is just a portion of my collection. Some of these I bought in high school, some of these I bought very recently, and some of them are great classics that will always be remembered as great albums, and other ones are, they're something else. And I've started to fall in love again with buying CDs and buying something that has a physical disc to it. And a portion of why people are buying CDs again is because vinyl is getting harder and harder to find. And not only that, but vinyl is becoming so expensive to the point where people are shelling out $30, $40, maybe even $50 for a vinyl record, where CDs, you can get them for maybe $10, $15 new. And if you go for a used, oh man, maybe $5, sometimes even less, which is amazing. So maybe CDs will make a huge comeback, and there'll be articles at the end of the year talking about CD sales. But if you want to get into CDs, or CDs just become popular, here's a few things that you should know when you go out and buy CDs, buy a CD player. So stay tuned. So of course, before you even start playing CDs, the first thing you're going to need is an actual CD player. And in today's market, there are actually two different flavors of CD players typically, and it's easy to get confused what the difference is between the two. So there are CD players and CD transports. Now, CD players will have analog outputs like an RCA cable. In some very fancy CD players, you'll actually have XLR cables, but typically it'll be RCA, and you can plug this into a receiver or an integrated amplifier or a pair of powered bookshelf speakers or powered speakers in general. Where a CD transport is only going to transport the digital data from the CD to another device. In this case, you're going to have a device that has a DAC, a digital to analog converter, in it. You can use a standalone DAC or an all-in-one device, whatever it is, but it will have to have a DAC inside it in order to accept that digital signal. So at this point you may be asking, well, how do I know if it's just a transport or it's a actual player? So this is my Sony CD. It's actually a DVD player as well. This is a CD, DVD, and SACD player. SACD is Super Audio CD. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if we flip this just to the back, you can see there's quite a few different outputs and inputs. So optical out and digital coax out. And typically these will be labeled with something like digital out. Most modern CD players will have at least one digital out, but some of the older vintage players don't have any digital out, and they're purely just players. They will not also function as a transport, in which case they will only have the audio out or analog out, and this will be a pair of RCA cables. In some cases you might have just one pair, but in this case on my Sony I have two. Also in the case of the Sony here, I have video outputs because, like I said, it's also a DVD player. Just like records on vinyl, there are records on CDs that have different versions, different releases, pressings, if you will, remasters, reissues. So let's take a original CD, like my copy of Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, which is from 1975. and see the differences between this and a remaster or reissue. Now, just like vinyl, on Discogs you can find the identification number, and this is going to tell you about when and where the CD was released. So if this was the US version or the German version, the Japan version, whatever region it was released for. And it'll also pretty much tell you if it was a reissue, remaster, original, something like that. So you can look up this number here, and this will be on pretty much every CD. If it's not on the actual CD itself, it will be somewhere either on the spine, and we see it there, and then possibly also on the back of the CD. But anyway, back to the disc itself. This is the other part of CDs I really enjoy, is buying CDs that are labeled like this, AAD. In some cases you may see ADD or DDD, and basically this means that this particular CD was recorded in analog, mastered in analog, and then produced in digital. So the digital is, well, the CD, because it's a digital disc where the music is finally put onto. But in recording and mastering this album, it was done on analog and then put on the CD. And I think that's really cool, because eventually this mark went away, because this told you about the recording process for the album, whereas later on, basically every album was recorded digitally, mastered digitally, and then put digitally on a CD. So you'll see this sometimes in older CDs on the actual CD itself, or in this case you also can see it on the back of the disc. Another thing to look for in these older CDs is the date. So here we see 1975, which is the original date of the album. Typically when it's a reissue or remaster, you'll see the original copyright date for the album itself, but then you'll see another date for when the actual CD was made or the remaster or such like that. So if we look at the SACD album from the beginning of the video, we can see that the original date of release is 1980, but then this CD is from 2003. So this is likely a remaster. If it was an original 1980 copy, we probably would see AAD or ADD or even DDD, and of course we wouldn't see 2003, of course, on the back of the album. But I really like these older albums with they have the analog recording and mastering. There's something about them. I think they honestly just sound better than the remasters. There's something about the remasters where they just like crush the dynamic range and do some other funky stuff. So I like to buy the older CDs that have this. This is particularly when I'll buy CDs. Now, like I said earlier, there are CDs that are SACDs, and those are very rare. Unless you're seeking them out, you probably will never come across them. So in a normal CD, you have a resolution of 16 bits, 44.1 kilohertz, and 16 bits is the data depth. So in 16 bits, you're going to get 96 dB of dynamic range at a maximum. Now, I wouldn't get too in my head about that, because what's more important is not the bit depth in this case, but rather the actual recording and mastering process, and also how your player and DAC end up actually processing those bits, but that's a whole nother video. And then 44.1 kilohertz is the range of frequency that the CD is capable of producing. So in 44.1, you basically get 0 to 20,000 hertz, which is the entire spectrum of human hearing and even a little bit more. Unfortunately, I don't have an SACD to show off, but they don't look any different, to be honest. An SACD just has 24 bits, 96 kilohertz of resolution, and some audiophiles swear by that and say they can hear a difference. I don't know if I honestly could. I don't have any SACDs, and honestly there's so few albums that are produced in SACD because it's such a niche format that I wouldn't be too worried about it if you're just trying to get into CDs in the first place. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Getting into CDs is very simple and very basic. Just know the difference between a transport and a player, and know what kind of CD you're buying, because with a lot of the older CDs and maybe even some recent ones like in the early 2000s, there are a few remasters and reissues, and they sound different, and some of those remasters honestly are just not very good. And you can find some really cool CDs and things that just aren't on streaming services because they're just not available. I don't know. Tool's available now on streaming services, I'm pretty sure, but you know, back in the day it wasn't. And the other thing about CDs is that artists and labels may have disputes in the future with streaming services, but no one's going to take your CDs away. So you can buy a CD and know that you're always going to be able to listen to it. Someone's not going to have a contract or label dispute, and all of a sudden their songs are just wiped from the streaming service of your choice. And in a lot of cases, the streaming services really only have one version of the album. It's usually the most recent remaster. They don't have the remaster from 20 years ago that might be heralded as the best sounding, or the original that may be heralded as the best sounding. So you could have potentially, 4 different versions of the same album. And with the CD, you can choose which one you want to listen to and not be forced into whichever one the streaming services agreed to stream. That's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that thumbs up, subscribe. Check the description below for other ways to help support the channel so I can continue to make videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.